Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's kick off with a tale of workplace dynamics that'll have you chuckling. This story comes from a radiographer who worked in the UK over 2 decades ago when a challenging colleague, Susie, tried to make life difficult for our OP. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Susie's Monday Meltdown. Why you shouldn't pass on a good thing. This took place more than 20 years ago, but it still makes me laugh. I'm a radiographer from Australia who used to work for the NHS in the UK. An older radiographer named Susie told me she didn't like locum radiographers and especially didn't like Australians. I was guilty of both, which is sad. Susie always tried to make my life hard, but she usually failed. Everyone on staff liked me, and I loved my job and the people I worked with. Susie tried very hard not to do anything at all, too. Almost everyone in radiology didn't like her, even the boss. At a meeting one Friday afternoon, the supervisor radiographer told us that on Monday there would be a new pain clinic service in the operation rooms, and each Monday a radiographer would have to go for 4 to 6 hours. Now, most of the radiographers I know don't like working in theaters. For hours, you stand there in a lead gown and press a button every so often. Some people really like it, but I guess it's fine sometimes. Susie quickly yells, "I'm not going to do that. Make the Aussie go. He's making enough money." Everyone looked at me, and I just said, "Sure, no mess." On Monday at 9 a.m., I went to the operating room and met the nicest pain expert and his nurse. They made the day great. There was one catch, though. After a case, the pain expert would tell me he didn't need me for the next one and let me wait in the tea room. I actually spent most of the day in the tea room in the operating room where I read the paper, ate cookies, and drank tea. When I got out of surgery around 2 p.m., the senior radiographer would meet me and tell me to take my lunch break and my morning tea break, and then I would work from 4 to 5 p.m. I'd get back around 3:30 p.m. just in time for my afternoon tea break. In the meantime, Susie's been sent to work on the wards in the general x-ray area, putting in work all day. It went on for months before I moved on. The senior radiographer sent another radiographer to the operating room for a pain clinic the last week I worked there, and that's when people found out what I did on Mondays. Susie was furious and insisted that she go to the pain clinic, but her boss told her that she had already said no. Susie tried so hard to make your life miserable, only to have her plan backfire spectacularly. Her attempt to dump what she thought was an unpleasant task on you turned into a weekly escape to the operating room tea room. The fact that she only realized the truth months later makes it even better. By then, you'd already had your fill of easy Mondays and were on your way to the next chapter. Her fury at missing out on the cozy setup she handed to you is perfection. And the boss's response? Just the right amount of dismissiveness to remind her that her original refusal sealed her fate. A beautiful, ironic twist that Susie absolutely deserved. And our second story. How dare you stand so close to me? I'm a self-checkout assistant. My responsibilities include standing close to the registers to prevent theft and ensure that any problems our POS system generates are resolved. I clean several registers as well. Late last night, I was exactly that when 2 women approached the register I was cleaning. I walked aside a little till she entered her money and the receipt stopped printing. I went over to inspect. She reportedly still owed $1.14 to pay. She asked me why it wasn't printing, and I told her that before I left. I still had to tidy the register, so I stayed close. "Are you staying here to check I not steal $1.14? No. Occasionally people are gross, thus I wanted to clean the register. Since that's what I have to do next, I just want to hang around. You know we come through self-check-through to avoid people." I rolled my eyes internally, paid, and she went without her pal. Her friend decided she didn't like any food she'd picked from the deli. I then turned it over to another partner to go back and resumed keeping an eye on the area. A woman wanted assistance scanning produce since on our system it may be a pain in the butt kind of thing. I returned to the register where I observed her to retrieve my paper towels and cleaner and see still 2 unscanned items on the belt. "Oh, are you going to pay for those in separate transaction or do you not want them?" "Well, I was going to pay for them in a separate transaction, but since you've been harassingly contacting me all night, I don't want them anymore." Ma'am, I apologize. That was not my aim. I was merely attempting to clean. You've been behaving as I had in mind about pilfering these. I'm going to call to ensure your management finds out about this tomorrow. She threw the 2 items she found remaining on the belt at me. Not really difficult, they were light, but it shocked me. Ma'am, I apologize. If you would want to speak with... Now you're trying to embarrass me in front of everyone to keep me from telling him what you've done. I'm just trying to understand what I did so that I never do it again. She left me with the super glue and electrical tape after grabbing her paid-for items. Sounds like you had quite the ordeal with that customer. It's frustrating when you're just trying to do your job and someone twists it into something completely different. Unfortunately, some people come into self-checkouts with a chip on their shoulder, assuming everyone's out to catch them doing something wrong, no matter how polite or neutral you try to be. You handled the situation professionally, apologizing and offering to clarify your intentions, which is all you can really do in the moment. It's also good that you remained calm, even when she escalated by throwing items, though no one should have to deal with that kind of behavior. If she does complain, it sounds like you have a solid account of events to share with your management. Plus, any reasonable supervisor will understand that you were simply doing your job by monitoring the area and tidying up. Don't let this one difficult customer shake you. Most people appreciate the effort you put in, even if they don't say it. And our last story. Neighbors dispute over fence. My grandmother lives in a cozy suburb just outside Chicago, where the lots are small and tightly packed. Her neighborhood's a classic slice of Americana, with houses squeezed onto 25 by 125-foot lots, except for the occasional oddity. She's lived there since 1958, and so has her neighbor Guy. They moved in the same day, became fast friends, and have been swapping stories over coffee ever since. Neighbor Guy had something unique for the area, a second lot, a rare 35 by 125 side yard that gave him an enviable amount of open space. For decades, he kept it simple, a lush, grassy patch and a garage with doors on both ends, just in case he ever wanted to put in a driveway. He never did. But then enter Mark, who moved in on the other side of Neighbor Guy's extra lot with his family. That's where this story takes a turn. One sunny afternoon, Neighbor Guy was out trimming his hedges when he noticed Mark cutting a giant hole in the back of his garage. "Hey, what's up with that?" Neighbor Guy asked, genuinely curious. "Oh, I'm putting in a back door," Mark replied casually. "It's going to make things easier for the family." Neighbor Guy shrugged. "Fair enough. Good luck with it." He assumed the new door was for convenience, maybe to haul out party supplies for their frequent backyard barbecues. He didn't think much of it and went back to the hedges. A couple weeks later, Neighbor Guy returned from a golfing trip with his wife only to find an asphalt driveway snaking along the side of Mark's house and onto his empty lot. A good 10 to 12 feet of his precious side yard had been paved over without permission. Fuming, he marched over to confront Mark. "What the hell is this? You paved onto my property." Mark, unfazed, pulled out a survey document. "Nope. This says it's my property," he said, handing over a poorly copied piece of paper. Neighbor Guy squinted at it. The numbers don't quite line up, and some of the lines looked suspicious. It didn't take long for him to realize that the document had been doctored. "This isn't real," Neighbor Guy said, his voice rising. Mark shrugged. "Yeah, you got me, but you're not even using the lot, and the alley has potholes. The contractors wouldn't do the driveway unless I showed them a survey, so I made one." Neighbor Guy was livid. "You better fix this, or I will." "Go ahead," Mark sneered. "It's already done. Deal with it." For weeks, the tension simmered. Neighbor Guy argued, threatened legal action, and tried to reason with Mark, but nothing worked. The stress even contributed to Neighbor Guy having a mild heart attack. Months passed, and Mark thought he'd won. Neighbor Guy stopped bringing it up, and they no longer spoke. Mark probably thought it's in the clear now, but Neighbor Guy wasn't the type to let things slide. While Mark and his family were away on a 2-week trip to Mexico, Neighbor Guy took action. Step 1, he hired a surveyor to mark the exact property lines. As it turned out, the boundary wasn't 3 feet off Mark's house like he'd always assumed. It was less than 2 feet. Step 2, Neighbor Guy called a fencing company. Within days, a tall, sturdy fence was installed along the property line, cutting straight through Mark's newly paved driveway. When Mark returned, he found his lavish driveway reduced to a 20-inch walkway. Furious, he stormed over to Neighbor Guy's house. "What the hell is this?" Mark shouted. Neighbor Guy smirked. Oh, just reclaiming my property. You told me to deal with it, so I did. You can't do this. I can, and I did. Deal with it. Neighbor guy shut the door in his face. Mark's once practical side driveway was now a useless strip of asphalt with barely enough space to walk through. On the other side of his house, his air conditioner and garden left no room for another walkway, meaning his only access from the front yard to the back was through his house. Adding insult to injury, neighbor guy waited 5 years to remove the driveway, letting Mark stew every single day as he stared at his failed project. When the time came, neighbor guy hired a company to rip out the asphalt, replace it with grass, and landscape the entire lot. He even sued Mark for the cost of the removal and landscaping. Mark refused to pay, so neighbor guy slapped a lien on his house for $8,000 to $12,000. When Mark eventually sold the property, neighbor guy got every penny he was owed. Mark moved away, but the fence still stands, a testament to neighbor guy's unyielding resolve. Every time my grandma looks out her window, she chuckles and says, "Never mess with neighbor guy." This is what happens when you mess with the wrong neighbor. Neighbor guy played the long game. And honestly, it's a masterpiece of patience and precision. Mark really thought he could get away with paving someone else's land with a fake survey, no less. The audacity is almost impressive, but neighbor guy wasn't having any of it. The man not only reclaimed his yard, but turned the tables so perfectly that Mark had no choice but to live with the glaring reminder of his failed scheme for years. The fence cutting through the driveway? A brilliant move. Letting it sit there untouched for 5 years before having it removed just adds another layer of genius. And that lien? A well-earned victory. Mark got exactly what he deserved, and neighbor guy showed everyone why you should never underestimate the quiet, friendly neighbor with decades of experience in both patience and pettiness. An absolute legend. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.